Hello everyone. I wanted to update this very quick thought because I came across a nerdy thing that I have meditated on for years, in particular after an observation was given to me by my pastor's wife when I was back in Dallas, Texas, Mrs. Jeannie Agwin, whom I have the pleasure of working with just on a virtually daily basis now in the editorial department. And it concerns fractals, in particular the Mandelbrot set. For the example I want to show you, Mandelbrot, it's probably the wrong way to say that. I think it's a French origin name, and Mandelbrot would be closer, but not exactly right. Mandelbrot always seems odd, like, Mandelbrot. But anyway, some of you are familiar with the Mandel, and I'll try to include a link to this particular YouTube video, but the Mandelbrot set, see the little, it's kind of like a snowman there on its side. Without going into a lot of detail, it's a fascinating fractal that is, if you keep diving in, if you keep zooming in to the fractal, the detail never goes away. Fractals like this have a fascinating feature that they are infinitely detailed. You can keep zooming in on, like, say, a circle, just a simple circle, and the closer you get to the edge of the circle, to the line, in fact, it seems flatter and flatter, right? Because you're just getting zooming in, but it never gets more detailed. It's, if anything, it gets simpler to the point you're so zoomed in on the circle that it almost doesn't even look like a circle anymore. It just looks like a line. That's kind of like where the Earth seems sort of flat where you are, because we're not really big enough to notice just how round it is. But fractals are the opposite. You keep zooming in and the detail literally never goes away. In fact, your computer will run out of processing power to be able to zoom in any further. The actual detail of the fractal, no matter which portion you really zoom in on, it never goes away. And so this video kind of illustrates that if you're not familiar. And I know it's cheap to hold up an iPad in front of the camera when I could actually just edit and maybe show you this clip. But you know what? I'm a little lazier than that, so I just thought I'd illustrate. So this video is just zooming in to this collection of points in this fractal, and you notice the detail never goes away. In fact, it's rich and it's amazing. And part of what really is fascinating about this fractal and fractals like it, this one in particular, it's a very simple equation. It's an equation I could explain to you in a few moments that generates this whole rich, amazing, infinitely detailed structure. And the only reason I was moved to make this video as I came across fractals again recently and thought of you guys was the comment that I still had stored in my brain that Mrs. Jeannie Agwin mentioned to me way back in Dallas when I was a congregant there. And whether she was just the pastor's wife who was humoring kind of a goofy nerd in the congregation, I cannot tell you. But we were talking about fractals and about this quality that you keep zooming in, and the richness of detail doesn't really go away. In fact, it just continues forever. And she said it reminded her of Scripture and the Bible. How when you really get to know the Bible and you make it a part of your life, then you find as you continue to zoom in, if you will, and you continue to meditate and ponder so many of its great passages and its sayings, that for the rest of your life, it really doesn't run out of richness. And you will find that a verse that you've understood, maybe for some time, some minister in a sermon will make a point with that scripture, a valid point. We could make up all sorts of fake points, but a valid point with that scripture. And suddenly that scripture takes on new meaning for you. It applies in your life in ways that you hadn't thought of before. And suddenly you're examining yourself in ways that you haven't before. And she said that sort of infinite zoom of fractals reminded her of the blessings that come from a life where you're constantly diving into the Bible. And I would actually say, which that kind of blew my mind. I really appreciated when she said that. And you may have heard that point before. But also, in particular, some fractals, not all of them, but fractals like this one, the Mandelbrot or Mandelbrot fractal. Part of what's fascinating about that one, and this is true of many fractals, is that there's a self-similar nature to it. And you might have seen it back. If you go back and rewind that video and watch some of the details, and again, I'll try to include a link to the YouTube video in this post, where if you it starts with that sort of snowman-looking figure, but then as you zoom in and all this incredible detail keeps coming at you, every once in a while you see the same snowman image. Now, if you look in detail, you'll find it slightly changed or perturbed, but it's that same weird little figure, and it keeps showing up in all these different places. And the mathematics of it is just fascinating. Why would you zoom in, like, say, smaller than an atom, if you will, just to try to give you some kind of sense of scale, and then see a repetition of the same figure from the previous, when in the end there's no fundamental reason to repeat, if you will? It's really fascinating. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out a little bit because I do love these things very much. But that said, I want to add that to Scripture as well, that when you really understand Scripture, because please understand, there are some people who just layer, so many people, too many people, put their own ideas on the Bible, so that as you zoom into it, you're not really zooming into it. What you're really doing is pondering your own ideas. And so people will put a variety of false meanings into the Bible. But if you really do understand it, if you're actually going into it truthfully and honestly, then what you see are the themes of the Bible constantly reflected over and over in many different ways. Just this week, I was doing a Bible study on Micah chapter 6 and verse 8 over several pieces for the Charlotte congregation. And as I did that study, and I was focusing on the part where he says that we should love mercy, and I was looking at various passages in the Bible where God talks about that, and it's amazing how you see this theme of mercy or grace and truth united together. And you see it in the Old Testament, and you see it in the New Testament, and you see it in the words of the prophets, and you see it in Jesus' words, and you find that even the themes of the Bible, as you zoom in, you get into the details and you see them reflected over and over and over again, sort of like a fractal. So anyway, just kind of a nerdy thought I wanted to share with all of you. I know sometimes the word math just makes you think, boy, I sure don't want to hear the rest of this video, but I wanted to honor as well that observation by Mrs. Jeannie Agwin that she shared with me so long ago. It's interesting what you can say to a person when they're young and dumb, and even when they're old and probably still sort of dumb, but maybe not as dumb, how those things continue to linger with them. Anyway, thanks for letting me share this, and I hope you have a fantastic day.